I can't. I'm sorry.
It was this exact moment that about 90% of the fan base completely turned on Poppy and added her to their hit list. Not me though. No, I'm part of the 5% that still likes Poppy. The other 5% are neutral towards her. I say she doesn't deserve the hate, and thus, today I am defending my client, Miss Poppy Playtime. It is my goal to get her off the hot seat and prove that she's not downright evil and that she doesn't deserve to be punted or given the same inevitable fate as the main bad guy. Today, I am this doll's lawyer. But before the trial can begin, special shout out to FV and Stealthy Pumpkin and my other patrons and channel members for being awesome. You too can be awesome by becoming one of those things. Links down below. Subscribing is also an option. It's free and it'll make me smile like Kissy Missy. And we don't want to make Kissy sad, do we? Anywho, let's get to it. Hello everyone, my name's Aloubell, and for those who don't know, Poppy is from an indie mascot horror game called Poppy Playtime, which is being produced by Mob Entertainment. The 4th chapter just released, and boy, does this story have some interesting lore. I'm not crazy about the gameplay. In fact, it's pretty boring to watch, so the only draw for me is the lore. And the animation and the characters. It's really like the puzzle solving I really don't like.
But Aloe, if you actually played the game, maybe the gameplay wouldn't be boring. Some activities are only fun when you actually do them instead of watching them. Like golf.
Wow. Way to isolate the golf fans. But even though I hear what you're saying, I refuse to play the game because 1, I hate puzzles, and 2, I'm a chicken when it comes to horror games. So no, I'm perfectly fine watching Let's Players play so that I have the security of scrolling down into the comments when need be. In any case, if you're new to the franchise, all you need to know is that Poppy Playtime is about this toy factory that used to experiment on orphans by surgically and painfully turning them into toys. That's the gist of it. Poppy is one of these experiments. She used to be a child, but unfortunately went through the horrible process of becoming the doll you see before you. Poppy hates her existence as a toy and despises what the scientists did to her and all of the other victims. She fears that she is steadily losing her humanity, knowing that she doesn't have much power to do anything about it. In order to fully understand Poppy and not outright hate her for what she did at the end of Chapter 4, abandoning her bestie and arguably best girl Kissy Missy and the main character to die, we need to get some things straight. Number 1, Poppy was most likely a child when the experiment was done on her, and it's very likely that despite some of these toys being able to mature to some degree, purely because of time passing and them adapting to their circumstances as well as dealing with trauma, I suspect that they all still have the mentality and vulnerability of children. I think that the experiments that were done on them stunted their growth and biology, that none of them were able to become adults despite how many years have passed, which is at least 10 years, probably more for some toys compared to others. This idea of the toys still mentally being children is the most evident in Doughy the Dough Man, who, during his final moments, was calling out for his mommy and daddy, saying he wanted to go home. Yes, I'm aware that this was just one of his personalities saying this, but the point still stands since that personality was formerly a child. I mean, all of his personalities are children. Different aged children, but children nonetheless. As in, he's literally made out of 3 children. The point I'm trying to make here is that he still has a childishness about him. Now, you could interpret this as a psychotic break or a trauma response, but it legitimately seems like the child never grew up. So keeping all this in mind, I'm pretty sure that despite her logic-making skills, Poppy is still just a little girl. A scared little girl who has witnessed and been part of some horrific events and who had to survive for years in terrible conditions. Speaking of which, number 2, Poppy is just a little girl who not only lost her father at a young age, but was made into a living doll without her consent. We get told some awful descriptions of the procedure involved in this process. Not only that, Poppy had to be fully awake during many of her experiments where she witnessed scientists taking stuff out of her and putting stuff in over and over. Even if she started to become physically numb to the procedures, she is still not okay. She was also thrust into a leadership role when it became time for all the living toys to fend for themselves, which I'm sure was mentally taxing to have so many other children looking to her for guidance. And if her mental state wasn't already beginning to crack, she was kidnapped and put into a case against her will for who knows how many years. She was in a confined space where she couldn't walk or sit, surrounded by darkness with presumably no one to talk to, again, for years. It's no wonder the girl started to panic and hyperventilate when the prototype, the main bad guy, threatened to put her back in the case. He was the one who put her in there to begin with, and considering how vulnerable she is, and considering at this point in the story, Poppy, Kissy, and the main character were all at the prototype's mercy, can you really blame the literal child for getting scared and running away? Really? Really? Is it that far-fetched?
But Aloe, Kissy Missy is a child too, and she didn't abandon her friends. She even proved that she's willing to sacrifice herself for others. The same goes for Doey too.
Yes, Kissy and Doey are the MVPs, but it's not fair to compare the two with Poppy. Even children have different responses to danger just like adults do. You know, you either fight, flee, or freeze. Kissy and Doey are fighters, while Poppy is a fleer. And yes, before someone corrects me in the comments, I know that Kissy technically froze when she heard the prototype speak, as she was curled into a ball and trembling, which indicates that she's not fully a fighter. It's almost like she, like most humans, are complex or something and react differently in different situations. Just some food for thought. And Poppy was in an emotionally shattered state at this moment, considering she just found out that she had been deceived for years by someone she trusted, the one she poured her heart out to. And there's a good chance her trust in basically everyone around her was also damaged by proxy. Because who else could turn on her? It's possible everyone is against her. Oh, and let's add that the prototype has had his eyes on Poppy the entire time. Despite her best efforts, she was almost never safe and easily fell for his tricks. The hope was very quickly getting squeezed out of her in just a small amount of time. She was 100% not in a good enough headspace to make a noble stand at this moment, so I can see why she turned and ran away. And let's not forget what happened to Doey when he was put into a bad headspace. How exactly did he deal with a terrible, awful situation that ran his emotions especially high? Now, I'm not saying that you have to respect Poppy. Obviously, what she did was quite self-serving and overall cowardly. But again, you can't blame her. And I'd kindly ask a lot of the fandom to get off their high horse. So many people act like they aren't capable of doing things like this. And I get it. We all want to see the best in ourselves, and we want to believe we will handle every situation with grace and strength and be able to stick to our morals no matter the obstacle. But that's not how humanity works. We mess up and we often show our ugliness, especially in times of stress and pressure. It's not something to be proud of, but it's reality. The truth is, we honestly don't know what kinds of things we're capable of or how we will handle future events. We can do our best to prepare, but curveballs happen. Poppy wasn't being a noble individual, and she definitely isn't a role model by any means, but there were times you weren't very noble either. As it says in the Bible, he who is without sin cast the first stone. It is very apparent that Poppy is not a terrible person. She hates the experiments that were done to herself and others and wants to put an end to the horror, making sure that it never happens again. Her methods to go about this are questionable, but you can tell she's mostly on the side of good. Just misguided, as a child can be. So yeah, she hates the experiments and the scientists. She hates Playtime Co., she wants to destroy the prototype, has empathy for the other toys and doesn't want them to suffer, and she clearly cares about her friends, Ollie and Kissy. Oh yeah, Ollie. I could rant about him, but this isn't about him. All I can say is that I'm disappointed in you, Mob Entertainment. You could have done something cool here, but decided to do the obvious. Tisk, tisk. But back to Poppy. She even shows remorse when she's about to run away. She says she's sorry, implying that she feels bad for leaving them behind. She's not a bad person, just heavily flawed. Now, did Poppy prevent the main character from leaving the factory against their consent, possibly leading them down to their doom just so that she could get back at the prototype? Yes. And did she abandon the toys she was leading before getting kidnapped? Apparently. Isn't it suspicious why she won't explain why she left? Sure. And isn't it also suspicious how she just somehow knows that the orphans from years ago are still alive? Honestly, that notion in itself is suspicious, but if it's true, why does Poppy know that?
Didn't the doctor mention that Poppy actually had a part to play in the Hour of Joy?
The Hour of Joy was when the living toys staged a coup and unalived all the adults in the factory, by the way. And yeah, he did say that. You might be able to write that off as him lying just to get under the main character's skin, but I think there's probably truth to that. We even find out in Chapter 4 that Poppy has had somewhat civil conversations with the prototype before. So, at the very least, it's plausible that she knew about the Hour of Joy before it happened. But if I were to guess, maybe she was deceived. Maybe she was told that the toys would only hurt the scientists and no innocent people. Or maybe she wasn't told about the violent aspects of it at all. Or maybe she was being controlled. We don't know. But even if she were consciously a part of the Hour of Joy, she could have eventually come to her senses like Kissy Missy, who also participated in unalived people. And the both of them and some others regretted what happened and came to the conclusion that they don't want to give into their vengeful desires and just want peace. We just don't know. Regardless, yes, Poppy's general knowledge is suspicious and it's not helping that she's keeping secrets. But it's very clear she's not on the prototype's side, so I'm not sure why some people are thinking she's a villain or something. Sure, in any story, there can be multiple villains with different motives who aren't working together, but I'm pretty certain that that's not the case here. So what we get from all of this is that Poppy is a scared little girl who tried her best to be strong and mature and to be a hero to everyone, but ultimately caved under her fear and the pressure of everything. Your Honor, Poppy does not deserve the hate. She may not be a role model, and certainly isn't the ultimate good, but she is a complex good guy at best, and morally gray at worst. Poppy's greatest crime, ironically, is honestly just being too human. Which is ironic because her humanity, to her, feels like the one thing she's losing. I rest my case. Now, what do you guys think? Do you still hate Poppy? Or did I manage to sway you? What do you think will happen in the next chapter? I made another Poppy Playtime video last year, so check it out if you haven't yet. It's up on the card at the top right. But first, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts and any toy emoji, and let's get this conversation started. But as for now, that's all there is. There isn't any more.